Imagine standing on the deck of a massive aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The smell of fuel, the roar of engines, and the sight of young pilots strapping themselves into their planes. In 1942, one question haunted every sailor and pilot. Could America's fighters ever match Japan's legendary Zero? At first, the answer was no. The Zero was fast, agile, and deadly. In the early months of the war, it ruled the skies. But then, almost overnight, a new fighter arrived. A plane that would change everything. The Grumman Hellcat. And this is the story of how it crushed the Zero, turned the tide of the air war, and helped win the Pacific. The Japanese Zero was unlike anything the Allies had seen when the war began. It was light, fast, and could twist through the sky with ease. American pilots who met it in combat were often shocked at how easily the Zero could outmaneuver them. Dogfights were short, brutal, and usually ended with smoking wrecks falling into the sea. For months, the Zero was almost untouchable, and Japanese propaganda made it seem even more terrifying. A perfect machine flown by fearless warriors. But there was a catch. The Zero was fast because it was built with almost no armor. No protection for the pilot. No self-sealing fuel tanks. It was a knife fighter that struck first, but if you could hit it, it burned. The problem was getting that hit before it got you. That is where the Hellcat entered the story. The Grumman F-6F Hellcat looked bulky compared to the sleek Zero, but that bulk hid its real power. It had a massive engine, thick armor, and 6 heavy machine guns. It could dive, climb, and take punishment that would rip a Zero to pieces. Pilots called it a flying tank. And best of all, it was simple to fly. Training new pilots was faster and safer. A young recruit could go from classroom to cockpit and have a fighting chance against the best Japan had. The first real test came in 1943. Over the waters of the Solomon Islands, Hellcats met Zeros head-on. At first, American pilots tried to dogfight, and the Zero still had the edge in tight turns. But then a trick spread among Hellcat squadrons. Never turn with a Zero. Instead, dive. Use speed. Fight in the vertical, not the horizontal. The Hellcat could climb and dive faster than the Zero, and in those moves, the roles reversed. Suddenly, the hunter became the hunted. By 1944, the results were impossible to ignore. In one of the largest air battles of the war, the Battle of the Philippine Sea, more than 300 Japanese planes were shot down in a single day. Pilots called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The Hellcat was everywhere, filling the skies with fire. Japanese squadrons were shredded. Veteran Zero aces were gone, replaced by rookies with only weeks of training, and they were thrown against American pilots flying a nearly indestructible machine. The kill ratio tells the story best. For every Hellcat lost, more than 12 Japanese planes were destroyed. 12-1. That kind of dominance was unheard of. In total, the Hellcat claimed over 5,000 aerial victories, more than any other Allied fighter in the Pacific. But numbers alone do not explain why the Hellcat mattered. Think about the young men climbing into those cockpits. Many were barely 20 years old. They were not looking for glory. They wanted to survive. The Hellcat gave them a fighting chance. Pilots described coming back from missions with their planes riddled with holes, engines coughing, wings torn. In another plane, they would have been dead. In the Hellcat, they made it home. And that meant they could fight again tomorrow. Meanwhile, Japanese pilots had the opposite experience. The Zero that once ruled the skies now turned into a coffin. They were flying outdated designs, facing swarms of Hellcats backed by radar, carriers, and endless supplies. The psychological shift was enormous. American pilots climbed into their cockpits with confidence. Japanese pilots climbed in with dread. The story of the Hellcat versus the Zero is not just about machines. It is about adaptation. America studied the Zero, learned its weaknesses, and built a plane designed to beat it. Then, with discipline and tactics, the pilots used those strengths to turn the tide. The Hellcat did not just match the Zero. It crushed it. And in doing so, it helped clear the skies for the island-hopping campaign that brought the war closer to Japan's shores. When you look at photos of the Hellcat today, big, rugged, powerful, remember what it meant back then. To a generation of young men, it was more than metal and engines. It was hope. Hope that they could climb into the sky, face the enemy, and come back alive. So, the next time you hear the name Hellcat, remember, it was not just another fighter. It was the carrier plane that broke the myth of the Zero, gave America control of the Pacific skies, and helped win a world war.